When I was a little girl, I loved heading down to the milk bar with my pocket money. Who remembers standing on one side of the counter, pointing through the glass and saying, "I'll have one of them, and I'll have two of them, and I'll have two. I'll have one of those ones and three of those ones, please, and how much money have I spent?" The days of design your own lolly bag are probably over, and maybe the majority of milk bars went out of business because of it. But I love taking my 50 cents, which I had earned through achieving all of my chores for the week. This was a purchase that I was making, and it was one that I was paying for. It was such a grown-up thing to do. And I thought that this is how the world worked. Everyone had the opportunity to work hard for their money and then got to spend it how they liked. I never questioned where the lollies came from. Heck, this was an age where the milk bar man just plunged his hand into the false teeth and no one batted an eyelid, no one cared. I just guessed that someone, like my parents, worked hard to make the stuff and then it somehow ended up in the shop down the road. Shopping is a big part of our lives. When I wasn't at the milk bar spending my well-earned cash, I was practicing shopping with my toy cash register and fake supermarket items. I was priming myself for a life of shopping. Some stats to come out of the US just recently reflect this world of consumption that we live in. The average American household has 300,000 items. 25% of people who have 2-car garages don't have enough room to park their cars inside. And 32% only have room for one vehicle when they have two. We live in a world of consumption. Lily Allen, a British pop singer, says in her song called The Fear, "I am a weapon of massive consumption. It's not my fault. It's how I'm programmed to function." There are a few other expletives in there, so I don't know whether I recommend you finding it online. Our lives are full of stuff from the shops. Once my parents were hosting a visitor from Papua New Guinea in their home. He went to the shops one day here in Australia and came home perplexed. He slowly and seriously asked this question after pondering it for some time. What happens to the shops when everybody has what they need? Goods used to be bought because they were needed. Then they were bought because they were needed and wanted. And now I think goods are bought, because they're just bought. Would you believe that 99% of our stuff, the stuff that we buy, is trashed within 6 months of its purchase? And some of those things don't even make it from the car into the house after we've bought it. But why? Well, stuff is all around us. We are told that we need to buy. We need to have the latest. We are, in fact, inadequate without it. We need the latest colours and designs. We need to buy. It needs to be down, cheap, lowest prices, discount, on sale, never to be repeated. Everything must go buy now, pay later. Consumerism is a concept that was used to rebuild nations after the Second World War. It was believed that nations would find their feet again by growing their economies, by producing and consuming increasing amounts. And this is why news items harp on about GDP, gross domestic product. And so democratic governments deregulated. They handed over their power to the companies who compete in a market where there is a race to the bottom. Maximise profits but minimise wages. Maximise output but minimise standards. Now, there's nothing wrong with efficiency, but too often efficiency has blurred into exploitation. And suddenly we have lost the mandate to rebuild the nations. In this system, from positions of power, we can choose to rebuild or we can choose to exploit. The world we live in screams at us to consume, to buy now and to pay later. The reality is that we often buy now, but somebody else pays. Take the $5 t-shirt as an example. The cotton may be grown and picked in Uzbekistan, transported to India, made into textiles, transported to Bangladesh, trimmed and tagged and sewn into your size, shipped to Melbourne, trucked to Doncaster, stacked on the shelf, sold by a lovely shop assistant in a store with air conditioning, lights, a hanger, and placed in a bag, and you take it home for $5? Who is paying for that T-shirt? Well, it may be the Uzbekistani. In Uzbekistan, up to 1 million people every year are forced into picking cotton. They are abused, oppressed, and threatened with violence. Or it may be the Indian. In India, a land famous for its rich colours and fabrics, it is estimated that up to 200,000 young women are trafficked to work in the mills and create fabrics ultimately used by multinationals. Or it may be the Bangladeshi. In Bangladesh, the minimum wage for garment factory workers, as set by the government, is $68 per month. This is still well below the living wage of $104 per month. And that is a standard, the minimum wage, which just gives somebody their basic needs. When my eyes were opened to the realities of where my stuff comes from, the lollies didn't taste as sweet, the computer games were not as much fun, and the supermarkets quickly became overwhelming. Could it be that I'm not actually paying for all of my stuff? I decided to investigate. Slaveryfootprint.org told me, through a set of 11 questions, that I had 47 slaves working for me and my 10-month-old Samuel. It is believed that there are almost 36 million slaves in the world today supporting the consumerism that was designed to rebuild nations. Consumption has risen, but compassion has fallen. Nations have risen, but individuals have fallen. They have fallen under exploitative demands. They have fallen to their deaths in Bangladesh's Rana Plaza collapse. They have fallen out of sight in a company's extremely long supply chains. It's time that the 36 million around the world, that their lives will rise again. Many years ago, governments gave over to companies the policing of rules and regulations of the market. As a result, more than half of the richest 100 economies in the world are companies, outpacing most national governments. But the story doesn't stop there. In the last few years, there has been a rise in the voice of everyday people demanding that others do not pay for their things, that companies are transparent about their supply chains so that we can make more informed decisions when we open up our wallets at the shops. So that in 20 years' time, when my son takes the questionnaire on slaveryfootprint.org, he will come up with 0 slaves working for him. Baptist World Aid Australia has recently released an ethical fashion report, grading the policies and performance of major companies that produce clothing for the Australian market. They are providing a reference point for you to consider how you shop and how you use your voice in advocating for change. You will be surprised as you read the report that is in your little goodie bag. There are expensive brands that are doing poorly, and there are cheaper brands that are doing well. In some cases, just raising the price of an individual item by 30 cents would ensure a living wage in the supply chain. So the end cost is not necessarily indicative of a fair deal. Research shows that 56% of people make a purchase based on product quality, 49% on free shipping, 35% on easy return. Nowhere in the top 10 reasons is there a whiff of compassion, of fair-mindedness. It is all about what is easiest for the consumer. I dream of a day when we buy because we care about the maker, the trimmer, the weaver, and the picker. The Ethical Fashion Report will help you to do that. An American journalist once said, "I was part of that strange race of people aptly described as spending their lives doing the things they detest, to make money for the things that they don't want, to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't like." I want to be a part of that race of people described as spending their lives overcoming things they don't understand, to speak up for those that they don't know, to raise their voices for people who don't have one, to pay for the things that do matter. I am one who longs to see change in our world, but change has never come without a price. We will never see change for the 36 million who are enslaved, who are trapped, coerced, tricked, exploited, impoverished and downtrodden and unfairly ruled over. We won't see change if we don't give more than loose change. We have run up an almighty bill, and we need to be prepared to foot that bill. Compassion has a price tag. The days of heading to the milk bar to purchase the self-styled lolly bag is over. But today, I still have the power to pick and choose, not simply to suit my own tastes, but for the benefit of every hand that has touched what ends up in my closet, in my pantry, and in my house. Thank you.